Hi, everyone. Welcome back. You know what day it is. Today we have a special dose. Her name is Milana,
Hey, Milana,
Hey,
welcome.
Milana.
Hey.
And she's going to be talking to us about PAs, what they do, and just how she got into that career pathway. So let's go.
But what is a PA? Stands for physician assistant.
That's right. No, a lot of people don't know,
Yeah.
actually.
I was like,
Bro,
Do you get that a lot, Milana? They're like, what's
I do.
that?
I do get that a lot. I'm like, what do you want to do? I want to be a PA. A what? A physician assistant? Like a what? It's like a spiel I get used to.
yeah, let's make sure people know what PA means.
Good idea, Linda. Good idea. So,
Mhm.
Milana, how did you get into that career pathway, or how did you even find out about it?
Yeah, so I've always been confident that I wanted to pursue a career in healthcare. I initially thought that really only looked like being a doctor. And while in undergrad, I started researching different career paths, and becoming a physician assistant just aligned more with my personal goals. I think the big pivot point for me was I shadowed a surgeon over one summer when I was still kind of on the pre med track, and I kind of started having more doubts. And it's such a long pathway, and it's a pretty challenging one. So when I kind of started having a little bit of hesitation going towards the MD route, I started researching what else was out there within the same field, and came across the PA profession, did more research, and I just realized like, yeah, that's more for me. That's like what I'm aligning with and where I see myself in the future.
Nice. Nice.
Do you think living here in the Bay was it harder for you to find like schools that have the PA like route? Like I know for us, I speak for like Lena and myself. For us to find like the entry level Masters of Science in Nursing and Family Nurse Practitioner was very scarce. There was not a lot of programs here in the Bay. Was that the same case for you, or were you able to find a lot of programs here?
So I'm kind of still looking at my list, and there are some programs in the Bay that have, like there's one at Samuel Merritt right in Oakland. Stanford has one. So I haven't really come across that issue. I also don't know if I personally want to stay in the Bay for my PA path. I think maybe what was a little bit more challenging was going to a school that doesn't know much about the PA pathway. I go to UC Berkeley, and they're really good at advising for MDs. And I remember when I was first kind of hesitant about switching, I made an appointment with my advisor, and I was given very little information. My questions were answered. So I think that has been the hardest part for me, is not going to a school that really has, like UC Berkeley doesn't have its own PA program. And I think there's just a lack of knowledge about the field in general. So I think that was more challenging for me than anything, is just kind of finding the resources on my own to figure out how I can even get to become a PA, how I can put myself in the position where I'm able to apply without the resources really being available to me and someone to guide me along that path.
I honestly I would agree with you because I feel like every time I talk to somebody, it's really either nursing or MD. I don't hear as much PA, and I know there's not as many resources available for students pursuing that field. So I can see the struggle there.
Yeah.
So, since it is a struggle, how do you go about looking for these programs? Like, how do you look into the programs to say, "Oh, this is the right one for me"? Because I know you mentioned it's challenging, but someone who's like in your position, what advice would you basically give them?
Yeah, research and email. A lot of the schools, I kind of like my I guess like steps to like choosing a school that I'm interested in. That list is still coming together for me, but like what I've been doing so far is I start with a location. Like for example, Boston is a place I'm interested in, so I'll just start researching schools that exist in Boston, Google search, right? And then from there, I start looking at the program itself, and I always look at the admissions requirements first. PA schools don't have a universal set of requirements. Like you're always going to probably need your anatomy, your physio, microbiome, but beyond that, there's a lot of variation. Like I've come across some schools that require anthropology or developmental psych, like schools like that have very specific requirements. Um, so it's really just about like going to those websites and researching and seeing like what kind of student are they looking for? Like, do they have a higher emphasis on patient care hours and experience, or are they a little bit more academic driven? Do they require the GRE? And just really looking into that admissions profile and like what they're expecting out of an applicant. And then from there, I started looking at like the class profile. Like some schools have the statistics of their recent class that was accepted. And that's a great resource for me because I'm a high GPA student, but a low patient care hour student. So I am kind of trying to gear that towards me and like where my application would land and be preferred. So yeah, I would really just recommend researching your schools, really getting an understanding of like what they look for, what their expectations are, and emailing. I've had a lot of success with just emailing schools. Like there was, like I took a stats class that was it was like covered stats for my major, but it wasn't actually like defined as a stats class in the stats department. So to be sure if that class even counted as a PA school stats requirement, I would just email. I would go on the website, find the email for the admissions. And just send like, hey, this is the syllabus for the class I took. Does it meet your requirement? And I actually got a lot of responses from them. And it's always great to just even like have your name out there, like so that like someone sees your name, they see that you're interested, and I would just start writing down those like what I would get from that information. Like, okay, this school accepts this stats class, this school doesn't. I wasn't really in a position where I wanted to retake a new stats class, so that kind of also changed like where I was applying. I was like, you know what, this school is fine with the class I took, this one isn't.
Mhm.
I'm gonna, maybe it's not worth it for me to take this one extra class just to widen my options that much more. So yeah, my advice is just research and don't be afraid to ask and reach out to these schools. I think they're always more than happy to help and give answers to students that are curious.
I love it.
It sounds like there are a lot of moving parts. How do you stay organized? Because I see that some schools have different requirements. Is there like a specific website or a way you keep track of your like all of these moving parts or all of these different requirements?
Google Sheets, yeah. I think it was, what school is it? Yeah, I think Baylor is the school that has a template on their website, and I think that's where I originally found it. They did it for their own school, and I think recognizing the fact that schools have such different requirements, and it's like literally on the column list, it's like physio, anatomy, GRE required, yes, no, and literally I'll just research a school, and once I kind of like, yeah, you know what, this is a school I can see myself going to, I write it all down. I'm like, okay, like before I took the GRE, I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to take this. Like, I don't know if it's worth it, if there's schools that I'm interested in applying to that require it. So I just made a list. And then it kind of came to December and I was like, you know what? There's like a handful of schools that do want it. So I think it is worth it for me to take. So yeah, just a huge doc, like on the top columns, I just have all the different schools. On the left, it's the different requirements, and it's just check marks. It's like, when does the program start? What does the school require? How many units? Like, do they want a medical terminology class? All these different things. Like, you're right, it's so hard to keep track of. And especially once it comes down to the end of my undergrad, where I'm like, there's not a lot more classes I can fit in. There's not a lot of flexibility for me to really change which requirements I'm checking off. I just start making that list. And once a school is kind of like, I recognize that it's just not feasible for me to take that extra class or get those extra hours, it just gets moved to a different tab. And I keep it there so I remember like I've already researched the school, I already like looked at the requirements, but it's not the one for me. And I just kind of like have a couple different pages of ones I'm really interested in, ones I'm kind of interested in, iffy, stuff like that. So yeah, Google Sheets.
Definitely sounds like you have to be organized, and you
Yeah.
sound like you're an organized person.
So, what advice would you give a student who is pursuing the PA career track, like when they're first starting out?
So shadowing is a great way to kind of understand like what the profession is. If you're able to have someone to just check in and kind of observe them in their space, like in their element, I think that's a great opportunity. It's kind of actually what I was shadowing a surgeon because when I was trying to be MD, that's what I was interested in. So that's what I was shadowing. And that's actually when I realized maybe this isn't for me. So to, be confident that it is something you want to do, I really recommend shadowing. Also, if it is a career that you're really seriously interested in, I recommend getting your foot in the door with some kind of job that can get you your patient care hours. It's one of those big requirements for schools. They want to see that 1,000, 2,000 minimum patient care hours that are documented, oftentimes paid. So you definitely, if it's something you're interested in, start maybe looking at a job as a medical assistant, an EMT, finding ways where you can get those hours, because you don't want to kind of make that decision too late and realize that you're thousands of hours behind where you need to be. I have some friends who are personally kind of a little bit conflicted with going the MD route, but they're at the point where they're haven't started their hours, and that can be a really scary place to be in because it takes a lot of time to accumulate those hours to get the job, the certification, whatever you need to start pursuing that. So if it's a career you're interested in, I really recommend starting to get a job where you can start, working with patients directly, recording those hours, and it's just great exposure. There's a reason it's a requirement. You want to make sure that you're really sure about going into medicine. It's not an easy pathway. So the sooner you can start working with patients and interacting in that kind of environment with other healthcare professionals, the better place you're going to be to really be confident and that's what you want to do.
So how long is the PA route? Like how many years in, like when we talk about schooling, like 4 years, 5 years, or
Yeah, great question. So, one of the requirements for PA school is a bachelor's degree. So, that's going to be 4 years. I think that's pretty common with any profession you go to. So, you have your 4 years in undergrad. And then the PA program itself is approximately 27 months. So, a little bit under 3 years. That kind of ranges depending on the program. I've seen some that are 30 months, but I would say 27 months is a pretty good standard. And that's it. You are trained as a generalist for PA school. There's no residency. You kind of choose your specialty once you pass the national exam. So once you finish your undergrad, apply to PA school, get into PA school. Once that program starts, you have 27 months. You take your national exam, and that's your training. You can do more specialized training whenever you find your career path, whatever specialty you decide to go into. But unlike medical school, there is no residency after. So that takes about 3 to 7 years off of your training. Which is something that was really honestly attractive to me. That's something that really helped make my decision to go to PA school. Is I do want to start practicing sooner than later. I love school, but I don't want to be in school for the next 8 to 10 years of my life. So kind of having this alternate route where I can be a practicing provider in 3 years, that's something that was really a big deal for me.
Yeah,
for the
that
bachelor?
makes sense.
Sorry, for the bachelor part, do you have to have like a
Yeah.
bachelor in a certain field, or can it be a bachelor's in whatever?
Can be in anything. So I'm a nutritional science major, which is a little bit less of your typical route. I started as like cellular molecular biology when I first came here. I still wanted to be a doctor at that point. As long as you get your requirements, it doesn't matter what degree you get into. I actually think that if you have a little bit less common degree, it can give you an advantage in a certain way. You just kind of stand out as a different applicant. But I will say it is challenging to get those requirements. There's a pretty hefty load of classes that you need to take to get into PA school. You need your anatomy, physio, gen chem, biochem, OChem, psychology, sometimes sociology. It's a lot of classes. So if you're in a major like English or something where there's just not that crossover, you're basically double majoring with a lot of really difficult classes. Um, but also GPA is a big
Exactly.
deal in PA school. So if you do choose a major that maybe is less demanding as like maybe neuroscience or something, you're going to be putting yourself in a better position when you apply. So as long as you get those requirements, it doesn't matter what your bachelor's degree is in. You just have to kind of be smart about it. Like sometimes I get a little frustrated that I don't have as much crossover as I would like to. I've had to take a lot of classes outside of my major that have been really challenging. But I also love my major, and I love having that different angle of understanding more about nutrition and metabolism than maybe your average applicant would. That's something I want to be able to bring into my practice, and I think makes me stand out. So, yeah, the answer to your question is no. There's no specific degree you need, but there are a lot of classes you need. So you'll definitely be in an easier position to have a major that overlaps a little bit. Like I had to take like gen chem, bio, stuff like that for my major. So that did help me a lot.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I want to emphasize on that because I was in the same position where, like, I knew I wanted to do nursing, but I couldn't apply directly into the program because it was impacted. So I did another major, which was public health, that had similar the same prerequisites. So when I eventually applied, it will basically overlap. So I wouldn't have to take a bunch of other additional classes. So it's very important to have whatever, I guess, your undergrad degree in close to the same requirements as what you
Yeah,
want to do, so you don't have to waste that time.
yeah, exactly.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 22.
She's
Oh,
a
you're
baby.
young.
Wow,
You're
you're
I'm a
young.
young.
baby.
You're a baby. But it's good that you're like on it right
You're
now.
so focused. Yeah, congratulations. Because not a lot of people. I know when I was your age, I was not that focused. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's just, yeah, it's just the journey too.
On it.
So, quick question: how is the whole application for PA school? Like, I know for Jasmine, she says that she has millions of interviews for medical school. I know for us, we had like some
Yeah, she
interviews,
does.
like the HESI test. How is it?
From what I understand, it's actually pretty similar. There's a centralized application. It's called the CASPA, and that's where you input your transcripts, you have your personal statement, you have your um, extracurriculars, all that stuff is in that centralized application, and then you add the different schools that you're applying to and it gets sent out. It also is where your letters of recommendation would be sent in. It's where, like, if you took a standardized test like the GRE, that's where it'd be sent in through the centralized application. And then once it's reviewed, and just make like checked for errors or whatnot, and the schools are, it's basically, screened by the schools, it's approved, I think is the term. Then you get your supplemental essays, and those are, distinct for schools. So I think that's very similar as med schools, is you get your supplemental essays that are more specific to
That
the
sounds
program
Yeah.
itself. Yeah, and
Okay.
then from there, again, similar to med school, you would, hopefully that'd be great if you could get an interview, and then once you're extended an interview, you would do that, and then however much time after that, you would either get your acceptance or rejection or put on the wait list. So I think it's pretty similar steps as med school, where there's, that centralized application, and then they're given supplementals afterwards, then an interview, and then hopefully an acceptance.
Nice.
Yeah, it sounds very, very similar actually.
Mm-hmm.
So are you, I don't know if I missed it, but are you currently in school right now in undergrad trying to for nutrition? Or are
Yeah,
you
so I'm in my senior
you done?
year. So no, yeah, I have one more semester. I'm kind of
Okay.
currently completing that. So yeah, finishing my bachelor's right now. Yay.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congrats.
That's exciting.
It is. It's
Wow.
scary. Lots of lasts for sure.
Oh, I bet.
No, but you're doing a really good job, and she's actually really amazing. She balances so many things. And something I forgot to ask you in the beginning was if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. So hi, Milana. So I don't know. What do you want to know? I'm a dancer, really into
I
fitness.
I,
I work as an
I hear
EMT with Jasmine. Um, I don't know. Do you have more
How
specific
long have you been an
questions?
EMT?
Okay, good question. Since August 2022, so I think that's about a year and a half now.
Nice.
Are you from Oakland or where are you from?
So I was born in Oregon,
From the
moved
Bay
to
Area?
No, I'm not. So yeah, I'm local to. So I was born in Oregon, like I said. Did a lot of most of my youth in Southern California, then moved to the Bay for undergrad. So up until I was about 20, I was living in Southern California.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I lived in Southern California for about 5 years, and I loved it, and I came right on back to the Bay Area.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's
She
home
did
for
you.
me, but yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. So, like,
Hmm.
my family's back in SoCal, and then I'm up here for school. And then after I finish my undergrad, it's still kind of TBD, up in the air. There's a couple schools I'm interested here, a couple schools in SoCal, a couple across the country. So, yeah, where I end up living in the next 3 years is definitely up in the air, which is exciting. But yeah, a little nerve wracking for sure.
So, how was the move for you? Since I know you're like from SoCal, was it like nervous? Like, were you nervous about moving to NorCal? And did you move here by yourself?
I was nervous because of the time too. So I was class of 2020 for high school, which was COVID. I started my freshman year in college during COVID. So it was weird. I didn't really have a traditional experience with that move. I actually was home. Because everything was happening at that time, and I got my dorm assignment, and they were basically gave me a triple all by myself, and they like don't let people use, like, it's like crazy rules that they were imposing, like you couldn't leave the dorm at certain hours, like even to get food. Like it was not a place I wanted to be, and I was like, I'm gonna stay home. All the classes were online, so I was like, I don't see myself moving to this new area and being with a bunch of people I don't know and not even having the opportunity to make friends because I'm basically like locked in my dorm. So I originally stayed home freshman
Yeah.
year, but I am not the type to stay home. I was very much like wanted to get out, move out, do my own thing, be like Miss Independent, start my new chapter of life. So I was not doing well at home. I was
I love that
grumpy,
for
I was stressed, I felt left out. I was getting FOMO even though there was like nothing going on, but I was like, I want to be at school. So I ended up reaching out to one of the girls I had been messaging with previously about like rooming, housing, whatever. And I was like, hey, do you want to move to the Bay? This was maybe October, like maybe I had already taken my first midterms at home. Like this was kind of beginning to mid semester, and I was over it. I had gotten in a fight with my mom, and I was like, I hate it here, and she was like, well then get out, and I was like, I will. So I started looking for an apartment, and I found a place in Berkeley. Hit up one of my friends that not even friend, I hadn't met her, but we had been like chatting online, like talking about room assignments, and I knew she was also home. So we basically coordinated to move up in October, and at this time, um, there were so few people in Berkeley that we were able to find an apartment pretty easily. And the landlord was like, "Yeah, you guys can move in October. We'll just start your lease then." So that was kind of how I moved. It was a little weird because originally I was gonna be home, and then I wasn't. So, but that's how I ended up in Berkeley, and I loved it. I'm really happy I did end up moving up. And because I was an apartment, I had a little bit more freedom than a lot of the people that were in dorms because I was actually, had my own place. So even though I wasn't on campus and classes were still online, I was able to like meet people and have a little bit more freedom than I would have if I was in the dorms.
Oh, nice.
As you
Nice.
should. I think college is a a very different experience, and being independent, being on your own really makes you grow and develop. So I think you did the right thing for yourself.
It makes a big difference because I feel that when I moved to LA for undergrad, that's where I learned about myself more. I was little Miss Independent doing my own thing. It's a different experience. I'm happy that you did make that jump because honestly, I feel that every person, like every student or just someone in general, should just try to live on their own for undergrad, move away for undergrad, get away from their parents if they can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely
That's
something
what I've
that
seen. That
I
you might do
needed.
another.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna bounce back to PA now.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're all over the
Uh,
place.
Right. That's what we're here
my
for.
fault. My fault.
Right?
My fault. I would say, what advice would you give someone who is choosing the PA route? And I know you probably have already said some of this, but um, if you could just, I think, bring it to one point, what would it be?
So, beyond doing your research and stuff, because we kind of talked about that, I think something that I think is really important is to be sure of yourself in your decision. I think a really hard thing for me was hearing I would almost say disappointment when I would tell people that I went to the PA route. It's something that people don't understand. People don't understand that as a PA, you have your own patients. You can prescribe your own medications, make your own diagnoses. You are legally under a physician. We don't have our autonomy, which is something I hope will change in the future, but that is something we kind of have to deal with is like understanding that you cannot go and open up your own practice. There will always be a physician overseeing you. However, that physician is not in the room. Like I shadow a PA, I've never seen the doctor that she is overseeing her work. Like it's a more of a collaboration, if anything. She has her own patients. They come to see her. She is the provider, right? So I think a lot of people don't understand that. And then when I say physician assistant, it almost sounds possessive, physician's assistant, but it's physician assistant. It's not like we don't belong to anybody. And I think it was really hard for me when I first started telling people that I wasn't going to pursue being a doctor. I was going to be a PA. And that is just not known to be as prestigious. People don't understand the profession. And it was hard. It was definitely hard, like trying to explain that to family, to friends. I'm a very like driven person. I always like challenge myself, and I felt like a lot of the responses I was getting was like, "Oh, like you could do better," kind of feeling. And I understand that you just have to be really sure with yourself, and that's I think what I'm trying to express is like you have to understand like in your heart that you will be a provider and you will be having your own patients. You are going to be making a difference, and if that's what you want to do, that's what you should do. Try not to listen to the different voices of people saying like you should be a doctor, you could be a doctor, oh why are you being an assistant. you're not an assistant. It's a title. They're actually trying to change it to physician associate because it's so misleading in the way it sounds. Um, so yeah, that's just what I would say is really stay true to yourself, understand that you are going to be making a difference and that it is the right path for you, and that don't let other people tell you, oh, why aren't you going to be a doctor, why are you not doing that, like, wait, why are you doing this instead? So yeah, that's all I'm going to say, because that's something I really struggled with. I had a really hard time kind of hearing like the oh, and you just gotta know that you're doing the right thing for yourself and that you did not go into this blind. You understand what you're doing, and other people don't, and that's okay. Hopefully, one day they will. It's a growing profession, and I think even my friends, they're like, "Oh, you know what? I went to see my doctor today, and I realized it's a PA." Because, like, yeah, like they're out there. People just don't know, and I think I really just hope that
Yep.
changes in the future years. I hope that people understand that a lot of the times you go to see your doctor, and it's a PA or an NP, and nurse practitioners are doing all kinds of things, seeing their own patients too. And I just don't think people are aware. I wasn't aware either, so I kind of try to keep that in mind. But yeah, I think that's my biggest advice.
I
Honestly, love that you said that, because that's literally what as an NP, what I'm dealing with as well. It's just like that comparison and like, oh, why don't you do this, and why didn't you be a doctor instead? And so it's to hear it's the same, like you're dealing with the same things. I was like, yeah, that's great advice that you gave, because
Yes.
you have to be you honestly have to be like true to yourself and just understand like how much you want it and not listen to the other people, because there will always be someone that has something negative to say. So thank you for
Exactly.
sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, question, I'm not sure if you know this because I know you have like good GPA, but what about for somebody that doesn't have a great GPA? Is there something that they could do before applying in to boost up their GPA? Or do you?
Um, yeah. So
That's a
post
great
back.
question.
Yeah, I think post-bac classes are always a great option to get your GPA up. I've known people to take like community college classes for certain requirements that like the PA eyeshadow. She actually also graduated from Berkeley, so we're really similar in that sense. But she took some of those classes that were required through a community college, and she said that helped her a lot. So if you're able to have the time to take some of those classes post-bac, or even like while you're still in your undergrad or whatnot, some of those like more challenging classes at a um, community college, just maybe where it's a little bit less rigorous compared to like whatever school you're at. um, and then also just like I said before, looking at schools that specifically maybe care more about patient care hours rather than GPA. Most schools have a 3.0 minimum, so as long as you're above that 3.0, I would say just you can take your extra classes, try to boost your GPA, or just gear your application towards schools that maybe emphasize academics less and stress experience more. Um, but yeah, the 3.0 minimum is something that you do need to meet. It would be a shame to apply to schools and just get your application tossed if you're not meeting that threshold. But I think as a like if you have a 3.1 or something, that's not something to beat yourself up for. There's a lot of schools take a very holistic approach at looking at your application. And if you have really strong background and really strong essays, whatever that is, I think there's absolutely a great chance that you can get into a PA school. I just think it takes a little bit extra research into seeing what schools are going to look at your application more seriously than others.
And I know I don't want to put any pressure, but do you know what specialty you might be interested after you're done with PA or not yet?
Um, Not yet, but that's actually also one of the reasons I want to be a PA is because there's so much horizontal mobility with being a PA. You're not bound to a residency program. I think even with NP school, you kind of choose a specialty while you're in school. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you specialize as an NP. With PAs, you're trained as a generalist. So once you go through your rotations the same way you would in med school. So you might kind of develop a interest in a certain field during PA school, but once you graduate and pass the exam, you can actually specialize in anything and you can change your specialty. You don't have to go back to a residency. And that's something that's really attractive to me as a person who doesn't really know what I want to specialize in yet. I like that my door's open to change if I want to. Like I can start in dermatology, switch to emergency medicine, and then maybe do internal medicine. Like I think most people end up sticking to what they want to do just because you develop you develop your specialty. You get good at understanding a certain kind of I guess, realm of
Field.
practice. Yeah, field. But you're not bound to that. And I really like that about being a PA is that you can change and it's not hard to. So, yeah.
That's good. I didn't know that.
That's awesome. I honestly learned so much with you today. I was gonna ask, is there any last piece of advice or anything you'd wanna share with anybody who's pursuing the field?
I don't think anything that I haven't.
I mean, you already gave really good.
Yeah. Yeah, just do your research and stay true to yourself, honestly. But yeah, emphasis on the research because I've heard a lot of stories about people sending out applications to places that they just don't meet the requirements. Like, it snuck up on me a couple times. Like, there was a school I was interested in, and I saw like in the fine print that they don't accept introductory classes for the requirements. I personally took intro to physio. Like, that was just the class I took for my physio requirement. So the second I saw that, I was like, ah, shit. Like, okay, moving on. So just be careful. Make sure that you're really meeting those requirements, and then, yeah, get your hours and yeah, just work on yourself and have fun while doing it. Don't get too stressed out. You will become a PA if you want to, whether it's this cycle, next cycle, the cycle after that. It's hard. It's really hard to get accepted. Like, I think every school accepts 50 out of like 2,000 applicants. It's not easy, but it will happen if you want it hard enough. So, yeah, just keep trying and it will happen. It's going to be hard,
awesome.
But yeah.
And thanks for mentioning that whole cycle, because I know a lot of times people expect to get in on the first cycle and maybe will not, and let that discourage them from actually thinking that that might be the career for them. So thank you for mentioning that. And I just also want to thank you for being here and teaching us and helping listeners, navigate that path. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to have you on again, and I'll see you tomorrow at work.
When you get accepted to PA school, and then you have to come and let us know how it's going.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yes,
Jasmine always talks about our podcast. You guys sound awesome. So really excited to be a guest here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. We look forward to seeing you in the future and interviewing you again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of PG3 with your hosts Linda, Jasmine, and Kathy. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe at a potent dose of 3 so that you never miss an episode and your weekly dose.